And here's a subject that I'm intimately familiar with: the pain of loving old dogs. The pain of loving old dogs. Nashville. It's 2 in the morning, and it has just started to rain. It's a gentle rain, with no threat of high winds or lightning. I know this without having to get up to peer into the dark night or put on my glasses to check the weather app on my phone. I know the facts of this meteorological reality without even opening my eyes, because there is a large dog with halitosis now standing beside my bed, panting. I'm grateful it's only a rain shower. If this were a thunderstorm, Clark would be pacing the house, climbing into bathtubs, and struggling to get out again, hunching under desks and overturning the chairs pushed up to them, knocking guitars from their stands, seeking shelter. He's afraid of the rain, but he's driven mad by thunderstorms. On stormy nights, my husband gets up to force a tablet of dog strength Xanax down Clark's throat, and for an hour we will both lie in the dark, sleepless, while the dog staggers around the house in a state of now drunken anxiety. Eventually, the human tranquilizer will override the canine despair, and we'll all go back to sleep. 30 years ago, my husband wanted to establish a ceiling for any veterinary bills that might be incurred by the cat he had just acquired by marriage. He said, if the cat needs something that costs more than $100, I say we opt for the $40 shot and go get a new cat. It was my cat, so my vote counted more than his did, and the cat lived to a ripe old age. But in my husband's defense, I should mention that his formative years were spent in the small town south, where humane people went out in the yard and shot an animal if it was suffering. I should also mention that in 1988, we were paying student loans on the salaries of first-year school teachers, and $100 was more money than we spent on our own food or medicine. I hear that. My husband would have found it impossible to believe that 30 years later he would be running around the house in his boxers, trying to tackle an ancient 70-pound mutt in the dark and shove a pill down his throat. Clark is also deaf, and he suffers from crippling arthritis. So far, we have been able to manage his pain with medication. But at his checkup last year, when he turned 13, the vet had some sobering news. With big dogs, there's often a huge difference between 12 and 13, he said. One day Clark won't be able to get up, and when that happens, it'll be time to let him go. The very idea is unthinkable. Clark has been our family protector, making political canvassers and religious zealots think twice about knocking on our door. Oh, amen. He was the dog of our son's childhood, the pillow they sprawled on during Saturday morning cartoons, the security blanket they returned to after an impossible test, or a classroom bully, or later a broken heart. At 14, this big dog has now surpassed his life expectancy. But he is not the oldest dog in our house. We are also the custodians of my late mother's ancient miniature dachshund, Emma, who is 7 months older. She has obliterated any thought of vet bill caps in her first 3 months under our care. Emma has survived countless trips to the emergency clinic because she is the most accomplished food thief her canny breed has ever produced. She dragged an entire pound of dark chocolate bonbons under the guest bed and ate them before anyone noticed a lone fluted paper wrapper in the middle of the floor and wondered where it had come from. Rummaging through visitors' purses, she has consumed whole packages of gum, pouches of dusty Tums, and once a Ziploc bag full of prescription medicine. There's no room here to tell the whole story of the time Emma ate a tray of rat poison at a rented fishing cabin on Kentucky Lake. But it involves a manic drive down a twisting highway as the whole family peered through the trees for a sign of any kind of store that might sell hydrogen peroxide. You don't know the real value of the human community if you've never poured hydrogen peroxide down an 8-pound dog's throat in the parking lot of a family dollar store with half a dozen rural Kentuckians offering advice. Let me tell you, country people know what to do when a dog eats rat poison. That bottle of hydrogen peroxide cost 78 cents, but the 3 months of professional treatment that followed made a trip to the emergency vet look like a trip to the dollar store. Other people make healthcare choices for their pets that we cannot afford for Clark and Emma. Amen to that. But we will always give them anything that's within our power to give. Amen to that. Clark, our children's canine sibling, and Emma, who gave my grieving mother a reason to get out of bed every morning after my father died. These dogs are our family. Clark is now under the care of a young hospice vet. On his first visit, a terrible day 2 weeks ago, when suddenly Clark could no longer stand up, the vet worked a miracle. Now on a new combination of medications, Clark is wagging his tail again and begging to be taken on walks. But time is still time and always unfolding. On the hospice vet's next visit, he will most likely be coming to help us say goodbye. Clark understands that he is old and weak and vulnerable, and it's hard now to leave him alone with his fears. I watch sometimes from the next room when my husband leaves the house and Clark thinks he has been abandoned. Standing next to the door, he folds himself up, lowering his hindquarters gradually, bit by bit, until his aching haunches touch the floor. He slides his front feet forward slowly, slowly, and he is down. A moan begins in the back of his throat, lower pitched than a whine, higher than a groan, and grows. His head tips back, his eyes close. The moan escapes in a rush of vowels, louder and louder and louder, and now he is howling. It's the sound he made in his youth whenever he heard a siren passing on the big road at the edge of the neighborhood. But he can't hear that far anymore.